Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to my Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Thank you. Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 103. I have Ioni Appleberg. He's a doctor from Sweden. He's also author of the book Abundance Through Scarcity, and he's on schedule to speak at the Adopting Bitcoin conference in El Salvador later in November. How are you, Ioni?
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me. I'm having a wonderful day.
Yeah, so you are so you're actually a medical doctor in Sweden. How did you get into Bitcoin?
That's correct. I've been interested in medicine for a long time, so that was a trajectory that I was on before I found Bitcoin. Then Bitcoin sort of intercepted that path sometime around 2015. And my origin story is pretty similar to a lot of people's. I had I had my first touch point sometime in 2015, and the story there goes that like sometime before then, maybe around 2010 or so, I was at a party in Stockholm where there was this fighter pilot who was speaking about. He was no longer a fighter pilot, and he was talking about the history of money and what money is, and these kinds of topics that I just found very interesting because I've never been introduced to the history of money or monetary theory before, and I just found that fascinating. He painted a vivid picture of a new kind of rabbit hole, previously unexplored on my part. So then a couple of years later, I found out that he offered courses, and these were in forex trading. So I did that for a bit, mostly just scam stuff, things that don't work, like technical analysis and stuff. But he introduced me to that world, and also a community that was quite vibrant. A lot of cool people there. That they and when Bitcoin started to emerge in the world, people were in this community were talking more and more about Bitcoin. So that was basically my first touch point. Then I read the white paper. I consider that my second touch point, and then as I started hearing about Bitcoin in other places, I really started to look into it, and I was deep down the rabbit hole by 2016.
Yeah, deep down the rabbit hole. 2016. What was your general impression at the time? Did you think, "Oh, this is crazy," or "This is"? I mean, so that was when you were down the rabbit hole. That means you got into, you put a lot of money into it, or you maybe started developing, or became an evangelist, or
Well,
maybe a combination of those things.
yeah, certainly a combination. I didn't start by putting a lot of money into it. I started by researching and writing and understanding the monetary philosophy, the technology, and started to become really intrigued by its potential implications for society, the downstream effects of a monetary system based on a hard monetary standard. It's something that we've only had glimpses of during the gold standard, but never like Bitcoin. And there are tremendous downstream effects of monetary technology based on a fixed amount of coins that cannot be used to spy on you and that cannot be used to steal from you. It beckons a future um, where people can actually plan and save for the future. So, what we in Bitcoin say is that Bitcoin is a mental operating system, like any form of money, that governs your time preference. So, much like, say, language is a mental operating system, language is used as a psychotechnology, a mental operating system with which we perceive the world. We need language to not just communicate, but to perceive ideas, understand ideas and concepts, and to put labels on things in order to understand them. And money, in a very similar sense, is another form of mental operating system, one that governs our time horizons. If we have a form of money that quickly loses purchasing power, it disallows you from saving for the future. If you go to South America now and ask somebody about money, about the future, and how much they're saving, their response will be, I cannot save. I cannot save because the money loses purchasing power so quickly that what they do is they collect their payment and go to the store and buy up virtually their entire salary, um, and then they just live a good life, but they have no ability to save for the future. And when you don't have the ability to save for the future, you are not oriented towards the future. You don't think about the future in the same sense, meaning that you start to neglect the future. You discount the future to a higher degree, and that translates to not taking care of your mental health and body for the long term, not fostering families, not building monuments that will last for 10,000 years, not doing science that will change the world in 300 years. Instead, you're focused on surviving now and building stuff that will last for decades or a century. So yeah, I digress, but yeah. Sorry, I kind of forgot what the question was. I
Yeah,
want.
well, you're not digressing. That's something I think that's probably happened a lot in a lot of the modern, at least in America. I think it's definitely happened in a lot of cases there too, though. That I don't think a lot. One other thing they often talk about, is planned obsolescence.
Yeah.
It's designed to break quickly enough so have to go out and buy a new one. And
Mm. Planned obsolescence
yeah,
is part of consumerism, and the consumerism culture is sort of
yeah,
it's a plague in society. It's a societal disease. It's a symptom of a society that is ill with money that is cancerous. When we have a monetary system like the fiat system, which it wasn't necessarily designed to be the way it is. I don't think the people working in the fiat industry are evil, but the system is. And the reason it is evil is because money is no longer just money. If we could have money that actually work as money, that would be fantastic. If we look at monetary history, we see that money is a fundamental technology in human society. It is a pretty magical technology. If you consider what money is at the core, if you look at money for what it is through a lens of how it functions, uh, it's it is a technology that allows you to store the value of your labor in a token, and that token you can move through time and space. So we now have a technology that allows you to put the value of your labor into a thing that you can move to a different place and across decades. And furthermore, it is a technology that is used as a medium of exchange, so that it solves the double coincidence of wants problems, which is basically I have I grow bananas, you make clothes, and maybe I want the clothes that you make, but you don't want the fruit that I grow. So we have a problem,
yeah,
and money works as an intermediate for that. Um, and then it also works as a unit of account, meaning that we put numbers on things to value them in relation to one another. But then over time, um, we used gold, which was very good money for the time when we used it. But then we globalized, and a globalized economy required faster money. So we invented the fiat system, basically, which allows us to send a different type of money faster across longer distances. Um, so over time, we have needed the capacity to move money faster and faster and longer distances as we globalized. So the fiat system solved that problem, but it came with it had other consequences as well, and these are the consequences that are now eroding society from within. The system has now turned money has gained a fourth function besides being a store of value, medium of exchange, and unit of count. It is now also a technology that essentially works as spyware. Money is now used to gain information about people. Uh, your where you move in society, where you are, what you consume, and these things produce metadata that is very intimate. People don't realize how intimate financial data actually is, but it's the most form of intimate data. It says everything about you, your financial life.
Yeah.
So now that money has gained this fourth function, becoming essentially spyware, we are living in an Orwellian society. Just imagine if we had digital fiat currencies with inbuilt uh, spy technology during the 40s and 50s. Like, you could not buy any kind of book that you wanted. You could not go to any website. You could not um associate financially with certain organizations. They would put you in a concentration camp. And now money has also gained a fifth function, which is a tool for redistribution of wealth. So through inflation, the state and the central banks can essentially steal money from you that you have to work for this money that they can create for free. And they also, when they create this money for free, they dilute the supply and thereby your purchasing power. And that is a form of theft, because when they uh, print money, they get to use that money at today's purchasing power. But as that money seeps into the economy, it dilutes the entire supply and your purchasing power with it. So that is a way of stealing from you and from future generations. So money has become this very oppressive technology, and Bitcoin is the solution to that. And we need a solution to the problem, because this problem of an Orwellian surveillance society where people no longer own the fruits of their labor and there is no property rights. Um, we need to fix these problems, because without proper property rights and a society, surveillance society, we cannot make the kind of progress that we want to make as a civilization.
Yeah, I do think some Bitcoiners would probably disagree that the people who work in the central banking system are honest. I think a lot of them are evil,
Yeah,
and
sure. Certainly.
certainly using money as a and I would just say using money as a tool for social engineering. Uh, not just redistribution, but picking winners and losers and just fixing the game. So, uh, it's yeah, it's very profound because I find people who generally don't have a lot of, didn't study economics a lot, but they get into Bitcoin and then they become very knowledgeable about all this stuff, even though it wasn't really an incentive to do so.
Money,
Yeah,
knowledge about money is a black hole on a lot of people's
yeah,
in a lot of people's lives, and because it's not taught in schools, which is very surprising. Now, there are a few schools that are changing that. For example, in El Salvador, they are actually introducing um, courses on money that are mandatory from a young age, um, where they will teach money, monetary history, and Bitcoin. And I think it's very irresponsible of virtually every other country in the world to not teach about money. And I'm not talking about how to make a budget. I'm talking about monetary history, what money is, and how it determines the kind of civilization we can build.
Yeah, it definitely does that. I mean, the thing about time preference is also very interesting because it seems like to me I don't, I do think in a lot of ways that our whole progress is maybe stalled somewhat. I don't know if we're moving forward like we used to be moving forward.
No, we're not. That's the whole thing. Since if we look at the 20th century, that is when we had like fundamental societal transformations. We learned things about the world that fundamentally transformed who we are, who we became. These were things like splitting the atom, um, and just industrialization. Uh, we learned new things about physics, about mathematics, about chemistry and biology that changed what we are capable of doing as a civilization. And this kind of progress, um, like we are now on the cusp of a new um, societal reformation,
Yeah.
a new renaissance, and they
Hmm.
are um, these societal reformations will be carved from the fact that we have Bitcoin, that we're seeing an economic renaissance, but also a renaissance in psychedelics and a few other technologies such as fusion power, AI, and longevity medicine. So what we're seeing here is we are now in the early stages of what is known as the fourth industrialization. Essentially, we're about to enter a new form of society where we have new technology that are just defining of the type of world that we will be living in. So right now we have some technologies that define this era, and they are things like the internet and the personal computer, um, fairly developed infrastructure, and the institutions that we have. Like these are things that define this era. But in the forthcoming era, in the fourth industrialization, when we have technologies like Bitcoin, AI, longevity medicine, fusion power, and these things, it will be a very, very different, exciting, and weird time. Society as we know it is ending. And I'm very optimistic about the future, because we have things like, um, because we have these technologies coming.
I'm a little worried that artificial intelligence is going to be used for bad purposes, and I'm already to a certain degree seeing that happen because they're using it to censor the internet. But
Yep.
obviously, it's only as good or as bad as the people using it.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
it's actually more dangerous than that. Like,
yeah.
yes, I am very worried also about powerful tools in the wrong hands, and that has been a danger for all of human history. But this is a special case because now the tools are becoming so powerful that they can basically end democracy and society as we know it in a very bad way. But I think that the potential upside outweighs the bad. That said, I have a lot of AI anxiety. I think that AI will not just end up in the wrong hands because it will. Hopefully, we will have the resources to counteract the wrongdoings of bad people, people with bad intentions. And now we have this technology, and this has been proposed by people like Mo Gadot and other technologists who say that we now, also Yuval Harari, he's made this argument before, and we basically now have our era's Oppenheimer moment when AI is is going to change the world in a way that is like beyond what people can comprehend. It is going to end up in the hands of a lot of bad people, but it's also going to be in the hands of a lot of good people. But the thing is, um, uh, the most important thing here is that these are machines that are now capable of building machines. They they have gained the ability to improve upon themselves. We have never before have had an atom bomb that could build another atom bomb, but now we do. Now we have these. Um, I don't want to call them creatures because they are tools, but these tools are gaining agency. They are gaining the ability to have uh, what could be called emotions. They are not human emotions, but they are emotions. They are gaining some kind of, I wouldn't say consciousness because that is also a human thing to possess, but they are gaining, they have recursive feedback loops, thought processes, observing thought processes, creating some form of self awareness. And these entities will now be able to create more powerful versions of themselves, meaning that when GPT-5 is used to improve GPT-6 and GPT-6 is used to improve the next iteration and so on, eventually they will be doing this autonomously. And that will lead to a faster and faster improvement where new abilities, new emergent properties will arise. And we have no idea what these properties are going to be. And they are going to achieve a super intelligence. And a super intelligent being on this planet means that we are no longer the dominant species on this planet. Some people think that we are summoning the devil. Some people think that we are summoning gods. And regardless of what your opinion is on this, it is clear that these entities are something that we have never encountered before, and we are in no shape or form prepared for it. And we are not devoting enough resources to solve the alignment problem. So, and for this reason, there's about half of all the AI experts believe that there's a small chance, but not a negligible chance, but some say even a 10% chance that AI will end not just the human reign on this planet, but the human species.
You know, if you've watched the original version of Star Trek, that is a theme that is explored a lot. And out of 79 episodes, there are 4 episodes that end with Kirk talking a computer to death. Basically, he talks the computer into committing suicide. And I find that so wild. I think it did explore a lot of, yeah, I mean, it's the question of when the master becomes the servant, and or the servant becomes the master, and also when the computer becomes an excuse to be lazy. uh,
Yep. Yeah. So a lot of people are worried about
yeah.
like the short term where
Yeah.
AI is going to change society, and by taking all of our jobs, for example. But that is not the what we need to be worried about in the short term. In the short term, we're going to see a lot of people's jobs transforming, and
Mhm.
a lot of people are going to be outcompeted by people using AI. So that is a reality. And then for example, in my profession, AI is being used more and more for diagnosis of specific conditions, but also help with just administrative work. Um, like what I'm seeing coming into the medical profession is not just groundbreaking research performed by AI. Like we have the AlphaFold project. I don't know. I'm not sure you're aware of the AlphaFold project, but it is one of the most significant breakthroughs made by AI to date, and it is it is a project um, where AI has been used to solve how proteins are folded. And protein folding is a very, very difficult and very important part of medicine. So normally, if you take if you have your DNA and your DNA doesn't code for you exactly, it can code for a lot of things. But the reason you come out of your DNA is because there are epigenetic instructions on
Yep.
how to code you from your DNA blueprint, and then those proteins have to be folded in the exact correct structure, and they are folded correctly through electrochemical processes, basically. But so when we look at a segment of the DNA coding for certain amino acids, so there are something like I can't remember, but what are like 24 amino acids or something like that. And when they are combined, three or more amino acids make a protein. And then the amino acids, when they are folded, they they gain a function. So when the proteins are folded, they gain a function. But learning how exactly a protein, based on how it looks on the DNA, how it is folded, has been unknown. So it typically requires an entire PhD uh, to determine the protein structure, the protein folding of one protein. So that's 5 to 6 years of a person's life to determine the structure of one protein. Now, in the project AlphaFold, um, an AI determined the structure of over 200 proteins in just a few hours or so, essentially saving humanity about 20 million years of labor. And so, this kind of groundbreaking discoveries we will see come more and more because now we have AI at our service. But then, like boots and grounds AI will also be very, very significant in modern medicine. For example, in surgery, where robots are performing more and more surgery, they will be steered with AI. Then for just simple things like that, diagnostics of X-rays, in radiology, in dermatology, and just internal medicine in general, these tools will be invaluable in helping us make diagnosis and treatments. And I think that we're going to see more and more cases of unsolved medical mysteries where AI actually solved them. And they're going to be essential tools in the everyday life of every medical professional sooner rather than later. And eventually, it is also going to transform our jobs so that we will have to shift our what we do.
That would be remarkable. You know, and it also looks like they're also using AI to trade Bitcoin or to trade other cryptos to figure out the right, the booms and the busts, so to speak. This is very interesting. What do you think about life extension in general? How do you think that's going to impact things? I mean,
So, life extension, which I call longevity medicine,
yeah,
is an area where I am. I would I would I would call myself a pioneer in this area.
Yeah.
It is what I'm trying to introduce more of in medicine. I am uh, my goal in life is to shift public opinion and medical the opinion of the medical community to regard aging as a disease and to start treating aging. But people are like, there's some nuance here. We're not saying that old age is bad in any way. What we're saying, and we're not saying that people are necessarily going to be biologically immortal, achieve what we call negligible senescence. What we're saying is that we want people to have um, a longer health span. We want to treat uh, diseases not symptomatically. Right now, we are playing a game of medical whack-a-mole. We are reactive rather than proactive, but we could treat a lot of age-related illnesses by treating age itself. So we come from a time when we had four big killers, and these were childbirth, infection, trauma, and starvation. But these four killers we solved by becoming rich and discovering antibiotics and inventing modern medicine. But now, in this second paradigm of medicine, we have instead other illnesses. We have four new big killers, and these are diabetes, cancer, neurodegenerative disease, and cardiovascular insults. So, but through modern medicine, we can't uh, cure these illnesses. We can only treat them and prolong life for a year or two, and that is insignificant in the grand scheme of things. These illnesses, they take up a lot of resources, and they cause a lot of morbidity and mortality.
Yeah.
And I think that the next big paradigm in modern medicine is going to be longevity medicine. Because here's the thing: what we do in longevity medicine is that we find entirely new targets to treat. So there's one very, like, people, when I say longevity medicine, I don't want you to think taking a pill, staying young. That's not how it's going to work, at least not for the foreseeable future. How it is going to work, however, is um, is classifying diseases based on their root cause rather than how they present. So, for example, um, osteoporosis used to be considered normal aging, as did as was dementia. Now we consider them diseases and we start to treat them, but we're only treating them symptomatically. We're not treating them for the illnesses that they are, which is what they are consequences of aging cells. And there are 9 or 10 hallmarks of aging that we are currently not considering illnesses. But these are the drivers behind aging, the hallmarks of aging, and each of these processes are diseases of the cell. So if we can consider them diseases of the cell, we can actually start treating them, and thus prevent things like dementia or other neurodegenerative diseases and cardiovascular incidents and diabetes and so on. And uh, and we have begun to design treatments for a few of these. For example, there's something called one of the hallmarks of aging is telomere attrition. So most people know that this is the most known hallmark of aging, is that telomeres are shortening. So what a telomere is when our chromosomes line up. You've seen these X's, like those are our genes gathered in chromosomes. And at the end of the chromosomes, there's a little segment known as the telomeres. And for every time a cell divides and the DNA is duplicated, there's a part of that telomere that has to go. It is there as a buffer. And when the telomeres have acquired a lot of damage or become short enough, the cells start to signal that, hey, our telomeres are short or we're damaged. So the cell becomes either senescent or it undergoes apoptosis, so programmed cell death. So cells don't live forever for that reason, because it's a program designed to prevent cancer, basically, that we have shortening telomeres. But we have seen that we can extend telomere length and prevent the risk of cancer by adding additional drugs. We've done these experiments in rats, and the rats live
Yeah.
30% longer when we treat their telomere shortening and counteract the cancer risk. And there's another, so that is just one general example. But then there's another very clear way of treating aging that we are already using, which is a treatment called Lysoclear, which is an injection in the eye, and it targets a specific disease in a specific organ. So there's a disease called macular degeneration, which is when the photoreceptors in the most densely packed part of the retina, where those cells start to degenerate. And the reason they start to degenerate is because in the cells, there is an organ called lysosomes. So you have to imagine the cell as a society. It has government, it has infrastructure, it has garbage stations, it has energy productions facilities, and so on. And the lysosomes is the garbage stations, and they have something like 60 enzymes inside them that break down garbage, debris, misfolded proteins, and so on. But then there's a protein, I think it's called something like PGE2 or something, that that the enzymes in the lysosomes are struggling to break down. And so over time, these cells can become filled with this protein, this misfolded protein that the enzymes can't break down. So over time, the cell can be filled to upwards of 80% of this misfolded bad protein, and that is driving macular degeneration. And this is a driver of aging, the garbage disposal theory of aging. It's one of the hallmarks of aging. So what we do is insert a chemical that helps the enzyme break down this protein, and that is actually targeting aging. So when we say longevity medicine, we are referring to treatments that are targeting specific hallmarks of aging in specific organs. So it's going to be very, very incremental, but it's just this idea of targeting entirely new disease processes rather than just working symptomatically.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. What's going on there? Yeah, yeah. It's where are some of the where are some of the places where this is being pioneered? I mean, is it happening in Sweden? Is it happening in Europe? Is it happening in I don't know if it's happening in America, where, but it sounds like it's really moving forward.
You're not going to be able to go into a family care facility or into a
Yeah,
hospital and have them prescribe some form of longevity medicine. At least not any drug that is designed to be a longevity medicine. There are drugs that are actually used as longevity. They can be used as longevity medicines. I, for one, I am taking metformin, which is a medicine to treat diabetes, but I don't have diabetes. I use it to for longevity purposes. I also take statins, and I take an angiotensin receptor blocker, blood pressure medication. Not because I have hypertension, not because I have elevated blood lipids, but I take these as for longevity purposes. So there are these drugs that we can use, but they're not designed for longevity purposes yet. They could gain that additional indication, but we're not there yet. So at this point in time, it is all still preclinical studies, but that is where modern medicine is moving. So it's mostly about the trajectory rather than where we are right now.
Oh yeah, well, it sounds very interesting. I don't know who would come out and oppose this, because it seems like I view, a lot of us view American medicine as very corrupt. It's all controlled by bribes and pharmaceutical companies, and they don't really, as some people say, we don't have a healthcare system in America. We have a sick care system in
Mm,
America,
right,
and
right.
I don't know if how you really get away from that. But it's
No, I agree completely. And here's the thing, how this ties into Bitcoin. Like we have a misaligned economic system where people are more valuable sick than healthy,
yeah,
where animals are more valuable dead on a plate than roaming freely in the woods, where a tree is more valuable chopped up than it is in nature. And this comes down to misaligned economic incentives. But the thing with Bitcoin is that Bitcoin realigns incentives. It incorporates um, all of these hidden costs. Like when I say that a tree is more valuable in a factory than it is in the woods, that is a fiat system type of reasoning, because over time the hidden costs of chopping down the rainforest, that is going to be a lot more expensive than it is producing value. And Bitcoin takes these things into consideration because it garners a long time perspective on things. And it also corrects price signals, which ultimately um, will help to align economic incentives in a way that will not be harmful to society, to nature, and human beings.
yeah. There's definitely something very interesting. I think so. You think Bitcoin will help fuel the longevity movement? Yeah. Uh,
Certainly, it
yeah.
will. Well, you also touched briefly on like people opposing longevity medicine, and there are a few arguments
Well,
that are
well,
quite easy to
yeah.
address. Yeah,
There's always people who want to who want to keep things as they are.
yeah,
They'll resist innovation because it might put them out of business.
mm,
They're not necessarily, they're regulatory capture, as we call it, and
mm,
considering how much medicine is regulated in
yeah.
everywhere, it's not a good thing.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
that is true. That is true. Just one argument that people often present is like, what about dictators and evil people in a position of power? Like, if we have longevity medicine and people start living to the age of 1,000, how are we going to deal with that problem? And yes, this is a concern, certainly. But if we reverse the argument and look at it like this instead, consider um, sorry, imagine a world where we already lived to be 3,000 years old. Would we invent modern illnesses, modern diseases, to counteract the fact that we had, if we had bad leaders and dictators? Would we impose on humanity uh, diseases like Alzheimer's disease and diabetes and cancer and cardiovascular illnesses? Would we impose these on humanity just to solve the problem of dictators holding their reign for hundreds of years? I don't think we would.
It's hard to say, and maybe we'd finally solve the political problem if we did have that, because it doesn't seem like we have. Because politics has not evolved at all. It's still based on the same primitive level as it was before. You've mentioned psychedelics. Where do you think the future is with psychedelics? I've got my own opinions on this, but
Hmm,
I don't know what you're familiar with psychedelics. But I'd love to
sure,
hear more about that.
sure. So we are currently living in an historic anomaly. This is a time when we are going to look. Future anthropologists are going to look back at this time and as an era of the grand prohibition. Like we have had times of prohibition throughout history. They've never worked well. They've only pushed substances into the black unregulated market and into the hands of criminals instead. Because as human beings, we have evolved with these substances, especially psychedelics. We have been using them since before we were Homo sapiens. They are part of our evolution. They are part
Yeah,
of our culture. They are part of who we are as a species. And neglecting that part is like neglecting, say, the need for connection, for breeding a family, or for sexuality, or like these things that are really inherent to us as a species. And we are have been denied these medicines for the longest time, and it is truly an historic anomaly. Um, but going forward, these we are now currently in a psychedelic renaissance, and they are coming into society like a freight train, and it is unstoppable. I'm a little worried that it's happening too fast, but it is the future that we're facing, and it has it will have tremendous um, upside for society and for human beings, because we're now currently living through an era where we are more disconnected from ourselves, from each other, from nature and the cosmos, to a point where people don't even know what the word connection even means anymore. There are quite a few people who have never had a sense of connection with anything, and that is a disease if I ever saw one, and it has horrible consequences for us as a society and a species to be disconnected. There's this painter Edward Hopper. He was from the early 20th century. He's made the painting Nighthawk, which is his most favorite one. I don't know if you can pull it up. And he depicts loneliness in a way that few other artists can. He recognized this disconnect that we are experiencing as a civilization, and he depicts that in people in modern society in a way that is just on point. Um, but yeah, psychedelics will bring back connection. Like when we have love and connection, there is no fear, and when there is no fear, there is no hate, there is no crime. If we could teach every 8-year-old to meditate, and if we could take every 15-year-old through a rite of passage using a psychedelic breakthrough, we would end wars in one generation.
uh, you know what? Yeah. Oh, we've been using psychedelics. What do you think about the more natural psychedelics, like say ayahuasca versus ones that have been made in a lab, like LSD or psilocybin?
Yeah, so ayahuasca is made from the ayahuasca vine,
Yeah.
and it contains DMT, dimethyltryptamine, and the four classical psychedelics are now DMT, as used in ayahuasca, psilocybin, found in what's called magic mushrooms, like the
Yeah.
psilocybin genus,
Okay. Yeah.
and then LSD, which was synthesized by Albert Hofmann in the 1940s. But it's actually it is a synthetic psychedelic, but it actually stems from a fungus that grows on rye. So it's actually LSD is just semi-synthetic because it's actually from a fungus. And psilocybin is found in mushrooms, as I said. And then there's the fourth classic psychedelic is mescaline, found in the San Pedro um, and the cactus, San Pedro, and what was called this slip of my mind. Regardless, from a cactus used in South and Central America.
Yes. So
Uh,
there we
so
yes.
I don't think like the body cannot tell a difference with from like if you take vitamin C in a pill or from an orange, the body can't tell the difference. Like that is a myth.
Yes.
It cannot tell the difference. So it doesn't matter if you use a psychedelic that was produced in the lab or a natural version of it. However, it is not insignificant whether it was synthesized in the lab or grown in nature. First of all, every psychedelic is different from everyone. They're all unique, and they have a unique interaction with each unique individual. But then there's also the fact that like the experience of the psychedelic realm will be largely determined on your set, meaning how you are feeling, the purpose of doing the ceremony, and also your preconceived ideas. And if you have a preconceived idea about psychedelics produced in the lab as being synthetic or something, you may have a different experience than if you take a psilocybin mushroom and eat the actual mushroom and not a pill. um, so that will influence your experience. And I mean the psychedelics, they are healing for their experience, not the actual molecule that they contain, unlike every conventional prescription drug.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, yeah. So as you pointed out, your body. I've heard different theories on that. When people said, you've got to get your vitamins from food, not from pills. Which I don't know. Yeah, how does your body know the difference? I mean,
No,
obviously,
it doesn't. It doesn't. You need like when it comes to diet, what we can say for sure, like
yeah,
there's so many questions about diet, but there are a few things that we can say for sure. Like a varied diet seems to be good for you, and there's a lot of downside to not eating what we consider a healthy varied diet. But there are not that much upside to eating a healthy diet, unfortunately. So it's not balanced. We're not going to gain longevity or a longer health span by eating healthy. We're not just going to harm our bodies by not eating bad food. But yeah, if you get all the nutrients you need and you don't eat too much, you're going to be fine.
yeah. It's very interesting to see how that goes there. I mean, psychedelics. There's definitely a crossover between psychedelics and Bitcoin. I don't know why that's happened, but I
Yeah,
see
there is
interesting.
like for several purposes. Like there are a lot of Bitcoiners who are also psychonauts. There are a lot
Yeah,
of people in Bitcoin who are interested and curious about psychedelics, and that is the reason for that is because Bitcoiners are generally people that are awake. They are people who uh, see the flaws in the current
yes,
mainstream narratives, and they have risen beyond that, and they are questioning um, what they've been told, and that is one step in your spiritual awakening. And and there are also like there are a lot of parallels between Bitcoin and psychedelics. As a matter of fact, I wrote Abundance Through Scarcity, and my forthcoming
yeah,
book, which I'm working on right now, is going to be about Bitcoin and psychedelics.
yeah.
And in this book, I will be drawing a few parallels between Bitcoin and psychedelics, arguing that Bitcoin is actually a psychedelic.
Yeah.
And it is a psychedelic, not a chemical one, but it is a psychedelic in the very real sense of the word. For its like so, psychedelic means mind manifesting. That is where the word that is what the word actually means. Psychedelics have had a lot of other words to describe them, like hallucinogens and so on. But that's a bad word because like sure there are some people who experience hallucinations when taking psychedelics, but that is such an arbitrary thing of the entire experience. And to describe these entire class of substances as hallucinogenics because a few people experience hallucinations on them, that's just weird. It's inconsequential. But But psychedelics, the term was actually coined in a letter from Humphrey Osmond to Aldous Huxley, where he wrote a poem, and I can't really remember the poem, but he used the words psychedelics, and it means mind manifesting. So, and so psychedelics show you what you have in your mind. It allows you to go deeper, and so the one term that you could use to explain the psychedelic experience is expansion. You expand everything that is inside your mind, everything that is in the cosmos, and you can be propelled, or rather catapulted into the center of the universe, and see the underlying mathematical equations that govern this whole thing. And you can see how it's all connected through love. And you have these incredibly real, vivid experiences. Like when you go there into the psychedelic realm, you say, ah, so this is reality. And then you come back here, in much the same sense that, like, when you're dreaming, you don't really question the dream's reality. You're seldom aware that you're dreaming, but then you wake up and say, ah, this is reality. It's the same thing when you go there. You say, oh, okay, so this life is just a dream, basically. And then you go into the real life when you go enter the psychedelic realm. And that is just, we don't know what to do with that. Like, there's no evidence of that being a real place, or like a portal to a different dimension. We have no idea what it means. But one thing that we can say for certain is that we can have experiences that we did not know that we could have, that seem to be beyond our our biological confines, our
Yeah.
neurological biological confines. Like, we can have experiences that are beyond our bodies, and people come back from these experiences convinced and unafraid uh, of of a life after death, of the meaning of love, of all of these beautiful and essential things, to what it means to being a human. So we can, when you've been to the psychedelic realm, you realize that the most spiritual thing that you can ever do is to embrace this human experience, because we are here for such a fleeting amount of time, and we are here as spirits, uh, gaining knowledge through this weird and fleeting existence as a human being. And it is a fantastic and magical place to be. The planet Earth as a human being. It's such a rare thing. And we get to have that. And to embrace that is the most spiritual thing that we can do, because as spirits, we are one day going to return to source, whatever that is. And then we are no longer human beings, but we are spirits, or souls, if you want to call it that. I don't think that's a good word. We're not even pure consciousness. I'm not sure what the words are here, because there are no good words for it. But yeah, we're returning back to source one day, and when you see that, it becomes very difficult to roll your eyes at that if you've been there yourself.
Yeah, yes, it does. What's the whole theme of your book, Abundance Through Scarcity? Tell
It
us
is
a little
about
bit about,
yes. Sorry, what was that?
tell us a little bit about that,
Sure,
please.
sure, absolutely. So, abundance through scarcity is about the importance of Bitcoin for the future of human civilization. It begins in the Roman Empire, and looks at how the money that they had led to their downfall eventually, or how it was a contributing factor to their downfall. And then it looks at the fiat system and our current era, and how we are currently undergoing a very similar type of decline as the Romans did, and we are heading towards collapse. And then it paints a high resolution image of the future, where we have Bitcoin, and that promises a different kind of society. So every society will have problems, big problems, war, famine, and pandemics. So every society will ebb and flow through decline and prosperity. And we have been in a decline for about 50 years. And the thing about decline is that the pendulum doesn't always swing. Sometimes the decline continues and society collapses. That is what happened in the Roman Empire. The decline never stopped. And when we talk about collapse, we often get the Hollywood idea about collapse, which is, burning buildings, people looting, and things just collapsing very dramatically. A collapse is not a very dramatic process. It's a slow and insidious process. It is geologically slow. Like, it took the Roman Empire 500 years to collapse, and we've been in a collapse for 50 years, or a decline for 50 years. But the thing is, when you're undergoing a collapse, no single generation will have a clear idea that they are even undergoing a collapse. It is only evident after the fact. Like, when the Roman Empire collapsed, they didn't know they had collapsed. It was something that we said, that we determined.
Yeah.
Our anthropologists determined that the Roman Empire collapsed in the year 476, but they had no idea. They had just experienced a radical simplification of a complex society over a span of 500 years. And that is what we are going through as well. We are experiencing a decline where we are becoming we are facing challenges that we cannot currently meet, and for that reason, our decline is continuing. And what states often do is that they try to bolster their power in the economy through inflation by printing more money, so that they get more money to solve the problems. That is the solution, but it has never worked in the history of our species. It has never worked, and it's not going to work now. It is only kicking the can down the road, which means that we are pushing the problems into the future, but we're not solving the problems. What we need to swing the pendulum from decline to prosperity is fundamental science, engineers, teachers, parents. But now, instead, we are seeing the worst case of depopulation in thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, where all the major economies are below replacement rate, and that is a very stern signal that we should not take lightly. And yeah, so we're currently in a decline, but the thing is, now that we have the thing is, the reason that currency debasement is dangerous, that it doesn't really help to resolve all the problems during a decline. Instead, they only make the future more difficult. By which I mean, if you survive a pandemic, a war, or whatever as a civilization, that means that you're now going into a future with broken money. And the next time you face a challenge, you break the currency even more. And we need money as a fundamental technology in society to coordinate our resources and workforce in order to progress. And if we no longer have that technology, we are become stagnant, and we will not be able to fight our way through adversities in the future. And that is problematic. But now that we have Bitcoin, we can essentially say for certain that regardless of the problems that we face, we are going to have to face them by actually fighting them, not by printing money. We're going to have to fight the actual problems, and we fight the problems by addressing resources to fight them, but also through research, through new discoveries, through science, through engineering, and by continuing to produce babies. We have to just face hard times sometimes, but we won't be able to break the money now that we have Bitcoin, because Bitcoin, there's a fixed amount of it. There's 21 million coins, and there are never going to be a single more, regardless of how much resources and energy we put into the system. There's not ever going to be more than 21 million. So we can't break the money. We can't break Bitcoin. So we will always have that technology coming out of a crisis, and so that we can continue to work as a society. So Bitcoin actually prevents collapse. It's a protection against collapse, so that in the future we can ebb and flow through decline and prosperity without the risk of an apocalyptic collapse during our worst declines. So that is essential the central theme behind abundance through scarcity, where the title then suggests that through scarcity, the 21 million bitcoins, an absolutely scarce, mathematically fixed supply, actually gives us an abundant future.
Yes, and of course, while Bitcoin, there is that limit of 21 million or 21 million bitcoins. It does have limitless divisibility. So
Yeah, yeah. So it doesn't matter how many
yeah,
coins are in supply. It could be two coins. Doesn't
yeah,
really matter. What it matters is that it's fixed, because, as you
yeah,
said, Bitcoin is divisible.
yeah,
So every Bitcoin is 100 million satoshis or sats, and
yeah.
even a sat is further divisible if needed.
Yeah, so that's one of the more important developments. Yeah, it definitely seems like we're looking on an interesting time here. You know, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. It seems like we are in very much in a crisis right now, and I'm certainly been watching my own country go downhill for a long time. I think Western civilization in general is having that issue. Europe seems to be worse off than we are, but uh,
Yes.
I, I think our inflationary money printing is probably going to maybe make us a little bit crazier, but I don't know.
Yeah, and money printing is the root problem. It's the cause of it all. If we fix the money, we fix the
Yeah,
world.
yeah, we definitely fix the money, fix the world. Yeah, and your connections between Bitcoin and psychedelics. I mean, that's also very interesting. What else do you have to say at this point? I think we said we'd go for about an hour or so.
Yeah, yeah. So this is yeah, it's been an enriching conversation,
Yeah,
and well, what can I say more? I'm very optimistic about the future, and
yeah,
I encourage people to not put your heads in the sand and instead start learning about Bitcoin, and maybe dip your toes. Just buy $10 worth of Bitcoin if you don't have any. Get some exposure so that you can actually then gain the momentum to start learning more about it. That is where people need to start. We need to push the Bitcoin, the Bitcoin gospel, basically. We need to push it on to as many people as possible to give them a life raft for the future.
yeah,
And people should also start learning to use AI tools, because this is where we're going, and we are in a transitional phase um, towards a very very weird and interesting future. So I would encourage people who are interested in the type of future that envision. Please follow me on Twitter, Ioni Appleberg. You can see my handle here for those watching.
yes,
And also, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, just Ioni Appleberg. I'm starting a new series very soon, where I'll be discussing the intricacies of the fourth industrialization, looking at future technology, including a lot of Bitcoin and psychedelics for sure, a lot of it. Um,
yes,
I will be posting there weekly, and also, of course, read my book Abundance Through Scarcity. You can find it on Amazon and my publisher Consensus Network. The Consensus Bookshop, Abundance Through
yes.
Scarcity, and it is written in the style of science fiction, so it's
Yeah.
but it's rooted in reality. So it's nobody regrets reading Abundance Through Scarcity, and I absolutely encourage people to read it.
Yeah, well, it sounds great. Yeah. Well, I'm Chris Baker. Please like the video, subscribe, follow the channel, and give it a thumbs up. Uh, you can get my novel Escape from the Village and check out my Substack. Thank you, Yoni. I'm Chris Baker, and we're out. Yeah.